Whew, the Golden Stallion is here for you. And baby, I got to tell you, wow. So today was another day at PorcFest, and I had to give my big talk in the big pavilion. And let me tell you, I gave this at 3 p.m. So this is kind of a prime time, people showing up, whatever else. And that room, the pavilion, I don't know, it could seat maybe a couple hundred, I don't know, something like that. And then you could have people standing around and whatever. And baby, this was standing room only today. I mean, wow, did people show up to hear about this? Um, I was in absolute awe. It was just it was kind of like a mini sea of people, and I mean all kinds of people, men, women, whatever else. I mean, just a beautiful crowd. It was really, really wonderful. So I gave that talk. It was all about reclaiming privacy, in our mobile world. Boy, I probably could have just opened it up to questions. But I guess initially I sort of had to let people know, that I know what the hell I'm talking about, because I mean there were quite a few Sovereign Tech listeners there. In fact, today I got to meet so many wonderful Sovereign Tech listeners that I know I've interacted with online, and have really, I mean, honestly, they've enriched my life in those interactions, and it was just so great to really meet these people in the flesh. Met some patrons. I know, met some patrons there. That was really wonderful, and so I gave this talk. Went about an hour. I mean, I think people wanted it to keep on going. I mean, they filled the place up, and it wasn't because it was raining outside, because at the time it was fairly sunny. They were just there and they wanted to hear it and make it happen. And then after that talk, and you're going to hear this talk, by the way, in a minute. I have the audio, and you're going to hear that. What you're not going to hear the audio from, and I kind of wish I set it up. I didn't know how this was going to shape up, but they set it up. The organizers, set it up. They just treated me like gold. It was really nice. They set it up so that I could do a workshop in this tent just adjacent to the pavilion. This big tent, and a whole slew of people just went right over there and filled that baby up, to hear me talk there. Now, originally I thought that this was going to be a workshop, and I had the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy to be there, to help people maybe install Signal or something like that. I had Paige Peterson was also quote unquote on call, thankfully, to help anybody out, and it was just it turned into like just a second hour of my talk where people just wanted to keep asking more questions and more questions. And they're really appreciative. They seem to, like a lot of people are saying, wow, man, like how the hell do you know all that? it was really something. But unfortunately, that second hour, because I didn't expect it to be like more of a talk, I would have recorded it if I thought it was going to be a talk. But I didn't record that, but there was a lot. I told some funny stories, some stories about the FBI, personally, about me, some other things, and but again, sadly, I didn't. At least, I mean, maybe in the future, the event organizers for PorcFest might actually have that audio, but I wasn't able to get it independently, so I can't show it to you now. But maybe it'll be a bonus in the future, because they had microphones and everything was connected, so I can't imagine why they wouldn't have recorded what was going on. So anyway, and I mean, it was funny because then there was a panel that came in after mine, and everybody was just kind of like, though, following me as I'm, heading out. They're just following me leaving the tent. And like, then they start circling around me, and just awesome people. It was so great to talk to everybody. I couldn't get to everybody's questions. I got to see some old friends. That was very nice. It's really just been, I mean, it's been dynamite, connecting with everybody. So, and I might be mistaken in this, but I'm pretty sure I already got asked to speak again next year. So, so what the hell? I mean, why would I turn it down? So I'm certainly happy to do that. I mean, even actually, if I'm, again, there's a chance that somehow my memory is failing me, but the president of the Free State Project said, "Hey, yeah, come back next year. Make sure you talk and everything." And well, rock and roll. Okay, so I'll do it. And maybe next year I'll. So I'm gonna do something special for Sovereign Tech tomorrow. But maybe next year I'll organize it so that there's a live Sovereign Tech that happens, because I think that would be that'd be very exciting. So anyway, you're going to get to hear my talk, my main talk that I gave in the pavilion to a lot of people, and well, I hope you enjoy it. So for Sovereign Tech listeners, especially patrons, these might be things you've heard me say a million times, but maybe there's nuggets in there that you haven't heard before. I start talking about the story that had already come out about the, what is it, like some odd 200 million voters where their information's been leaked from, of course, this from 2012. I'll bring up some of that, which I'll probably talk about, if not on tomorrow's Sovereign Tech, on a future Sovereign Tech. But anyway, just a great time. I really wish I caught that audio for what was supposed to, again, was originally going to be like a workshop, and it ended up just becoming a huge Q&A session. But I imagine I'll be able to find that at some point. So, but anyway, it was a real honor to speak in front of so many people. I got to connect with a lot of people doing some very interesting projects, Freedom Coders, some others. I mean, really, really cool stuff. So that's it. I won't take much more of your time here, and we'll just bam right in to the to the talk, and I will let the applause, this really standing ovation, I'll let it ride it out. So there you go. And of course, there will be a new Sovereign Tech out this week. Might come out a little later at night on Saturday, just because I'm not exactly sure I'm going to record it when I'm going to get to upload it, because the internet is kind of a spotty situation. But I'll do that, and we'll rock it out, and you'll have it. And then, of course, I got a lot of great content planned for next week that you'll be able to enjoy, and hopefully we'll have a lot of new patrons. Before I go. darkandroid.info. You know what that website used to be, but now that URL, it will take you to, guess what? My very first book. My very first book. It's Dark Android, a 2017 edition. I'll probably talk about the book more at length on Sovereign Tech, okay, on this week's Sovereign Tech. But if you want to get your hands on it, all you got to do is type in darkandroid.info. It will take you right to the book. This is a book, I'll just say this here, this is a book for everybody. Any technical level, okay, that, if you're a Sovereign Tech listener, this is the book you want to be, and it's available on Kindle right now as an ebook. It'll be available in other formats in the future. It's only $2.99, but this is a book that you can hand to your brother, to family members, to friends, whatever, who even aren't tech savvy at all, that will help them if they have an Android device, and even if they have an iOS device. There's a lot of good tips in there, but it will get them hooked up with using these encrypted technologies. So I'm very excited to have my very first book out there. I mean, I am so, I am tickled pink at the idea of being an author. It's very exciting for me. So anyway, so that's out there, darkandroid.info. That's enough. I'll let you can now hear my talk on reclaiming privacy. Woo! And I'll see you on the other side.
Happy PorcFest. So when I knew that all Mike and I were going to take over the pavilion, there was one name that I knew that I had to have at the main pavilion at PorcFest, and that was my good friend Brian Todd. So if you don't know who Brian is the lead developer and chief troublemaker at Zomia Offline Games, as well as the creator and host of the popular science and tech podcast, Sovereign Tech, and sovereigntech.com. You don't want to miss that podcast. His background is in technology, comes from years spent with multiple tech companies, the U.S. Army, and for being involved in the cyberpunk community since the 1990s. I'd love to welcome Brian Sauer.
This thing's on. Okay. Woo. Yeah. All right. How many people here have heard of Sovereign Tech? That's a pretty good crowd. Okay. Woo. So they know I do that a lot. I do it in real life. It's not just something I do for radio. Great to see such an awesome crowd here. I see Ernie Hancock, and how could I not mention Disney? What a Stallion right there. Anyway, so this is a talk about how to reclaim privacy and security, which we're going to find out. We'll discuss. They're kind of kissing cousins. in our mobile world. Now, I'll start it right off with saying one of the best ways to reclaim your privacy with really surveillance, not just surveillance state, surveillance society that we live in, as Julian Assange called it, is to not become somebody that ends up on this stage and is talking in front of a bunch of people. That's not a great way to live a very private life. So avoid that. Don't do what I do. Maybe that kind of disqualifies me from talking up here. But anyway, how many people, here's the next question. I'm going to do this a lot, so show of hands when I ask the question, if you don't mind. How many people here use an Android device? So we're going to concentrate pretty hard on mobile. Oh, this is awesome. Why the majority use Android? Okay, because if you use Apple, you have to leave. How many people really do use iOS? It's okay, I won't shame you. No. All right, that's great. So a lot of what I talk about, since it is such an Android-centric crowd, I'll certainly talk about iOS as well. There's a lot of great things to say about iOS, frankly. In fact, Apple itself, as a company, is probably number one as far as security for their devices. As far as just like raw consumer security, they really do stand pretty tall. And based on the various leaks that have happened over the past few years, really ever since the Snowden revelations, that would include Vault 7 from WikiLeaks and others, you generally find that really Apple ends up on not looking as bad, not so much pie in the face as some of the companies like Google, Microsoft, and others. Not to say that Apple is this perfect paragon virtue of a company or anything like that. One of the key things to really start reclaiming your privacy, and we'll discuss some of this, and there's going to be plenty of time for questions. How many people here already have questions lined up for me? I mean, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go. I knew there would be people already. So we're going to get into those later on. But one of the main things you're going to find out about is concentrating on open source. So let's talk about security, privacy, and anonymity. These are three separate things, even though they often get talked about and lumped in the same story, as if they're the same thing when they're not. So privacy, I think everybody probably has a pretty good idea of what privacy is. Privacy means that what you say, what you do, what you're doing, actions you take, perhaps things you buy, whatever, are not revealed to anybody else. That's privacy. Now, security is not the same thing. Here's an obvious example. Say people not knowing what you buy. Okay, security would be you can feel secure, well, maybe you shouldn't feel too secure, but you can feel relatively secure that when you buy something from Amazon, nothing is happening to your credit card information, and that they know what you bought, obviously, because they have to ship it to you, but the transaction itself is relatively secure. So there's just one example of how security and privacy are two very separate things. But the argument could be made that you really can't have that security without that privacy. Of course, you go down the road of, well, you're making a voluntary transaction with Amazon and things like this, that's fine. But that's where really anonymity comes in. Anonymity would mean that nobody knows, even where you were buying from, has no clue what exactly you bought or what your transaction was. Now, this is possible when you consider technologies like OpenBazaar. Has anybody been talking about OpenBazaar at PorcFest at all? Yes, probably. Yeah, there's been people talking about it. Okay, good. So that's an example, though, again, of where you see that anonymity is a completely separate thing. So the first thing to get to understand about reclaiming your privacy is what actually privacy is. For getting security, what actually security is. For anonymity, maybe people don't think so much about going after anonymity. But it might be also, just like security and privacy are kissing cousins, might actually end up being a love triad. And anonymity is part of that love triad. Yeah, there we go. So, does everybody, do you get what I'm saying here about anonymity, privacy, and security being three separate things? Does anybody disagree at all? No, nobody disagrees. Fantastic. Good. That'll make this all go very smoothly. So when you understand those three things, then we can get into what actually is happening, what is going on, why don't you have privacy, why don't you have security, because guess what, in a lot of ways, you don't. It doesn't, how many leaks, what was there? There was that big voter leak the other day, 198 million, voter accounts or information, information about 198 million voters was leaked. I mean, it's the largest of all time. Yes, it was from 2012, but that's the problem, is that when you have these interconnected technologies per se, or when you're using digital technologies like even electronic voting, you end up, if you don't have these three concepts baked in, privacy, anonymity, and security, this is what happens. So one of the first things that would, like, let's say for example, the voting thing. I mean, the easiest thing to do would be to not vote. Honestly, I think that'd be a great thing for you to do anyway. But that's just my opinion. To take it easy, okay? But one of the best things really that you could have done in that case would have been to, if there was a way. I know people want to talk about secret ballot or something like this, but would be to limit the amount of information that you get out in general. Okay, like not give them that info. And this is something that's a problem across the board with just about any tech company out there, is that they want to collect as much information as they can about you. And you may think that it's largely benign. You may think, oh, I'm just being part of the democratic process or something like this, when I go to vote. But then, again, yes, that information was from 2012, but now 198 million people have lots of information out there in the world. I mean, it got plugged up. We don't need to get into the specifics on all that. The bottom line is that it's feasible, it's possible that lots of people have that information out there about you. So if it was never collected in the first place, that would have been great. Now, the average way that you work, you only vote every, 2 years, 4 years, I don't know, whatever the time frame happens to be. So that's not the best example to talk about there. But let's talk about some of these tech giants out there that you deal with all the time. Like most of you said, you use Android, okay, which is great, because Android gives you options. However, there's some degree of limitations to that. One of them being, of course, who owns and operates Android. That's Alphabet/Google. Big Google, big G. Now I got it. AlphaGoo. Yeah, I like to put, there you go. You got some sound tech listeners out there, because I have a lot of nicknames for all these things. I'm trying not to use them, but yeah, AlphaGoo is what I call it. The reason I call it AlphaGoo is because it's important. Google became an umbrella company, a parent company called Alphabet later on, and I think it's crazy to not want to address what every other little company underneath Alphabet's umbrella, but like that they don't interact with each other. Of course they do, so you want to keep that in mind. That's why I like to say Alphabet/Google or AlphaGoo. Google does give you some degree of options within Android itself. I mean, this is an area where the few iOS users out there, you're great, because you don't ever have to use Google if you don't want to. It just doesn't have to come across the board. You can use Apple Maps. I mean, I don't want you to be driving in your car and roll off into a river or something, because Apple Maps, might be a little problematic, but you don't ever have to use Google, and that's great. That's where if you're an Android user and you're not installing perhaps alternative operating systems which do exist as far as Android goes, you have what's called Lineage OS, you have Copperhead OS, you can use the completely open source version of Android called AOSP. Setting all those things up requires very specific hardware, and also it's not as easy as it used to be, and it is a complex situation. But those are things I'm definitely worth talking about. By the way, I am doing a workshop just after this, so if you want to talk about that sort of stuff, then we can certainly do that. Not that I can install a whole new OS on your phone, in an hour or there. But anyway, you do have those options, but most people aren't going to do that. So what can you do right now? I mean, it's very important, like we said, in the example, the analogy of voting, like say with Google, like what happens if Google ever gets cracked into? And it is with any service, with any online service. I think it's very important to keep in mind that it's a matter of if, not when. It's a matter of when, not if. Sorry. It's a matter of when. It's never a matter of if. It's just going to happen, and it probably already has happened, just nobody knows about it. Okay, so you want to limit the amount of information that you're giving to these people in the first place, because that will take care of your privacy, and then privacy indirectly affects your security. Because if you had, say that voter leak, again, for example, say that none of that information was given to them, and all you did was flick a switch and vote, it would leak. Okay, well, it leaked. It'd be the same information that everybody else knew. That's why it's important why you want privacy, to make security as perfect as possible. There may be no such thing as perfect security, but you want to make it as perfect as possible in doing so. So when minimizing data with Google, it's very simple, like My Activity. In fact, even if you're an Apple user, you can go to this. It's myactivity.google.com, and there's a slew of switches that you can go to where you can just start turning everything right off, saying don't keep track of this, don't keep track of this, don't keep track of this. Now, the trade-off of doing things like this, of minimizing the amount of data that you give to these companies, is that in the security world, you have a constant trade-off, which is security and convenience. Want more security? You're going to lose convenience. And as it stands right now, it doesn't appear there's ever going to be a change in that. It's just the nature of the beast. So, you're going to have to, if you want security, you're going to have to instantly get it in your head. There's going to be convenience loss, whatever that happens to be. If it's because when you start moving stuff away from Google, if it's because you're going to end up with, not having a location history, privacy anymore. That makes it easier for you to travel with Google Maps. I mean, these are just things you have to consider. To have anything that looks remotely like privacy or security, there are a lot of modern conveniences that are going to go the way of doing it. Now, you don't have to get rid of all of them, and everything's up to personal taste, everything's up to personal threshold, and that's fine. But that's the name of the game if you're trying to get privacy again. Now, it's important to bring up, I guess I'm saying I didn't even get into why you might be concerned about Google so much, even outside of your own data leaking or getting cracked into or something like this. How many people, and if you don't, it's fine, I promise I really won't shame you. How many people here know what corporatism means? Have you ever heard the term corporatism? Here we got quite a few. Okay, so corporatism, I'll just say it quickly. Corporatism is the concept that corporations, companies work in conjunction with the government. That's a very basic definition of that. And I think that that's very true just by the nature of their ability for these companies to operate in the United States. In fact, it's long been known by the late great Castro Bowden, who said that, who found out quickly, he actually worked for Microsoft back in the 90s, that there's a law in the books that any company that runs servers in the United States has to, at the drop of a hat, hand over all of their data on their servers. Once the government comes and hauls it. This goes true for Google, this goes true for Apple, this goes true for Microsoft. Doesn't matter. If they run in this country, that's what they need to do. And that's why a lot of people will spend, like, say, for setting up a website. Like me, I have a website, cog.email. I pay for hosting. I pay extra for hosting outside of this country. Okay, to try and circumvent that law. Now, you can argue that, well, yeah, but if you try and circumvent that law, the NSA is going to get it anyway. Yeah, you might be right. In fact, that's an important point to bring up as well, is that if you are a targeted individual, everything I'm describing here about trying to get your privacy back, trying to get your security back, all of this, if you are targeted, say, by an alphabet soup organization, like the NSA, like the FBI, whatever it happens to be, I mean, like, it's like a manhunt situation. You're screwed. Like, there's nothing, and maybe this will get people to walk, cause people to walk out or something, but there's just nothing you can do. They really have all this stuff cornered. Most people don't even consider, I mean, everything I'm telling you about would be on cell phones, perhaps laptops, things like this, that doesn't say anything about buying gas, you track when you do that, what you do with your credit card, when you go to the store, if you're using cash, lots of these other things, and there's so many different areas where, look, if they're targeting you, it's over. But that's not to say that everything's futile. I mean, there's something to be said for making things expensive for you. So we're kind of starting off with Google and making things expensive. But my point is that since we do live in a corporatist society, Ron Paul certainly said that, there's plenty of means that would readily admit to you really do not want to hand over so much information to these companies because they are, like you said, by law, to even operate in this country, they are going to have to hand that information over to the government when they need to, or whenever they want it. So that's a very real concern. Now, the beauty of that is that you can have security. You can have things like a Signal. How many people have the Signal app installed? You know what I'm talking about? Oh, man. Now that's exciting. I'm done. You guys have Signal. I'm out. What else am I supposed to say to that? Yeah, Ernie's just raising the height. Because I got you to use Signal.
No, I got to ask this question.
Yeah, all right, go for it.
I went to a new phone.
Here's the mic. Here's the mic.
Ernie's starting questions. I love them. But Ernie gets what he wants. It's just, you learn that quick enough.
Okay, you did encourage me to use it, and all of a sudden we're on the air. I do it live. It goes but it's the same technology as WhatsApp. WhatsApp's Facebook, so hell with them. So then I downloaded Signal, and before we even got to the break, all of a sudden people were texting me, "Hey, welcome to Signal, welcome to Signal."
Right.
Then I'm going, well, that doesn't seem very private. So it may be encrypted, but one of the big chunks of information I don't want the man to know is who I'm encrypting with.
Right.
When I went to a new phone to download Signal again, the permissions were like twice as long as they were when I did it months before.
Yeah, because they had a lot of features. Right?
So I'm looking for the app that will give me encrypted communication that they don't know who I'm talking to.
That is a great point, Ernie, and actually that segues in nicely to what I was about to talk about. So to address Signal directly, now this is a company where they do operate quite a bit in the United States, and they have had the FBI and whatever other offensive organization go to their offices and say, hand us over the information, and they complied with the law that I described to you, that, okay, we'll give you the information, but all they could give you was the fact that you have an account, your phone number, and the last time that you ever used it. And that's all they've got. Everything else is completely encrypted. This is that importance of privacy and security. But it does not have the anonymity. That's what I think, Ernie, that's what you're looking for. So this goes to the point that I made earlier, which is security and convenience. Now, the way to quickly secure that who you're talking to and verify who you're talking to is via a phone number. For contracts, a great technology still to use to this day for privacy, security, and anonymity is PGP. All right, PGP encryption. It's one of the oldest versions of encryption. It's still one of the best. It does the job. You set it up with an email. There's one kind of small problem. Okay, that used to be addressed years ago, back when PGP was kind of a very underground thing. One could argue it still is an underground thing. They do what's called key parties. Okay, now. I'm not talking about key parties where, a few guys, a few gals, end up going to somebody's house, and then everybody's grabbing, everybody's other keys, for their cars, and then you go home. Look, I have no problem with that. I mean, hey, rock and roll, man. That's certainly all the anonymity part, right? But anyway, that's not what I mean. Key parties is that with public key cryptography, which is what Bitcoin is based off of, PGP is based off of, Signal's based, like a lot of these different protocols are based off of. You share a public key with people to verify that it's you. The problem is that, particularly with PGP and with email, is that anybody can create an email at any time. You don't know who the hell you're talking to. And that PGP key, sure, could be valid, but again, you really don't know who you're talking to. As to where, with Signal, using phone numbers, it creates a very quick verification system. That, yes, it's absolutely this person has that phone number, I can call them and make sure, anywhere around the world. That doesn't mean that there's not such thing as interception. I'm not talking about Signal particularly. But there's a reason that it's done that way, Ernie, and I totally understand that. But that is that situation where the convenience of quickly verifying who you're talking to and quickly creating a database of connected users. Because like the PGP, you create a PGP key for your email to encrypt it, you have to upload it to MIT, so that people can find it and everything, or unless you do a key party where you both kinds of key parties. How sexy is that? Do that and then encrypt your communications? Come on, that's a great way to do it, I think. But yeah. But anyway, so that's the reason that it's set up that way. And I agree that that's not really the best, that it works in that fashion. I've recommended PGP, using PGP encryption for email above Signal, and I still do to this day. A lot of people disagree with me on this, and I understand the disagreements. But for my personal threshold, yeah, I don't like that either. And I also don't like that Signal pretty much works with the telcos. You have to pay the telcos money. And the telcos themselves, AT&T, we know. You can read how many stories from the Washington Post just in the past year where AT&T admits that they have a revolving door. On my show on Sound Tech, I regularly say that when I mention FBI, CIA, I say AT&T at the same time because they're an absolute government organization. It's just a fact. Okay, but to use Signal, you've got to pay these guys. And I think that that's ridiculous. It's where with email, you can set it up through anything. You can even have your own mail server. You can do it that way. I think it's just a far better infrastructure solution. The crypto's great, so that's no problem. And we can talk more later about this. Particularly with Android, there's very easy solutions for setting up PGP email encryption on Android. There's an app called Open Keychain. To look for it. It is so basic. I wish it existed 20 years ago, and then everybody would probably be talking with encrypted emails. So anyway, so that raises that's part of the concern is that a lot of these technologies that we're using on our smartphones, absolutely, there seems to always be that trade-off of privacy and security, or not privacy, of security and convenience. Okay, and a lot of people want things to be convenient. How many people here have Facebook Messenger installed on their phones? Come on, be honest. I'll raise my hand. I've got it. Come on. Yeah, I know there's other people that do it. You're not raising your hands. Shame on all of us. But yeah, so Facebook Messenger. Now, that's the other thing that everyone was talking about was permissions and all this. But here's the thing. So a lot of people have talked about one of the avenues for trying to reclaim our privacy and security is to use new hardware. New phones, like there's the black phone, right? I'm trying to think there's a few other ones out. I know there's one called Granite phone. There's one by McAfee or whatever. Yeah, right. These things are ridiculous because honestly, as soon as you install Facebook Messenger on there, all of that hardware means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. And you can, later versions of Android, you can choose what permissions are allowed, like what you allow to work with an app. I think it's from Android 6.0 and up. However, two things. One, you'll probably start losing functionality, or like the app will start crashing if you turn off certain features, like perhaps the microphone or something. The second part is those are what's called a soft switch, meaning that, okay, yeah, the software says it's off, but is it really off? And ironically, McAfee's phone, one of its big selling points is that it has all these hardware switches on the back, which I applaud. I think that's very nice. But the reason they went with hardware switches is to give you the confidence of knowing that what you turned off, you really turned off. So they recognize, I'm assuming they recognize that soft switches themselves are kind of an issue. So now I'm talking about a very perfect world situation there, but I just want you to know that like as soon as you start installing the apps and a lot of these things from some of these big companies, not just Google, but Facebook, Microsoft, whoever, I mean, all the security and all the attempts at privacy in the world are gone. I mean, they disappear just like that. So that's a real issue. That goes back to pretty much me saying that look, if you're targeted by one of these companies or something like that, or not companies, but by one of these organizations like the CIA, FBI, whatever. I mean, they're one of the ways they're going to get you. Another thing to think about. This leads into the point of I wouldn't call it a tragedy of the commons, but it's an issue of the commons, and that is the more people that implement a lot of these different things that I'm talking about, or changing your mindset, maybe not installing that app from that company, or using things like Signal and stuff like this. When we start switching up to those, everybody kind of benefits from that, because you could be this guy, you're wearing your dark shades, you've got your trench coat on and everything, you're being really private, you don't even have a mobile phone. Which would be phenomenal. What an easy way to get privacy, right? You think. Not really, because everybody else around here has a mobile phone. Okay? Everybody else has that little microphone and that block of sensors in their pocket. So it really behooves everybody to use these best practices, to use these encrypted apps, to use encryption, because it can protect everyone. Because even if you think you're doing everything right, the person next to you, oh, well, they can't listen to me, but then the person, just, 10 yards or whatever away from you has their cell phone on, and then they just listen in from, say, like that. So I'm being kind of hyperbolic and a little paranoid a bit with that, I admit, but that's the reality. That's why you want everybody on board with this stuff. I mean, when you're trying, with a lot of these technologies that you end up using, we'll describe a few more in a minute, with a lot of these technologies, when you're trying to sell people, like, why should I use this? I'm not worried about anything. I don't have anything behind, but in reality, even though the individual is the single most important thing in the universe, it's about more than just you. Really, everybody can be affected in a positive way if everybody gets on board with using encryption. Even the basic stuff, even if it's something that's not perfect. There's Ernie's concerns and Signal are absolutely valid. Still, making it just that much more expensive for these companies, for these alphabet soup organizations, for governments around the world, is a totally valid thing to do. And they can run out of money. I mean, you can see in a lot of their control centers where they're overheating, they can't keep up with the amount of hard drives that come in. I mean, it really does affect them in a very serious way. In fact, there's leaked documents that talk about how you could set up with Tor. I'm trying to remember the exact lineup that they recommend, or that was on the slide from one of the Snowden leaks that said, we really can't get past this. This is very difficult. So it's possible to some degree to do this stuff, but it only really works when everybody's kind of using it and using it interchangeably between each other. So let's talk about some of the apps that can be used. Does everybody here? Let me ask this: does everybody here agree that encryption should be used? And that, yeah. Yeah? Woo. All right. There's a slide going on. If you want to have fun, go to Snopes and type in mosquito drones. You know what it comes up with? Snopes is the site that's supposed to debunk all these conspiracy theories and everything. When it gets to mosquito drones, it says inconclusive. Yeah. Anyway, let's. So a lot of people here agree encryption should be used. How many people feel like I mean, let's see. How many people at a confidence level of their security setup? We'll do 1 to 10. I'll start with 10. How many people feel like you're at 10 that you have it really figured out and you got your security setup going? All right, good. Because otherwise, I don't know why you're here. So that's great. How many people feel they're about like 5? I mean, like they're using some stuff. Okay, excellent. All right, you need to listen to Zomia 10. Okay. So anyway, well, let's talk about some of these apps that can be used. A lot of the stuff is interchangeable with a desktop that you can end up using to, just create this great, new security best practices for yourself personally. One of the apps we already talked about was Signal. This is an app that has become very, very popular in a very short period of time. It's been around for a few years. It actually was created by an anarchist named Moxie Marlinspike. He still runs the company. He still cares about all that. And it has, ever since President Trump, I can't believe I'm saying that, ever since the president got elected, there has been some like 600% increase in usage of Signal. People got it. But some of them are, oh, wait a second. I need to start encrypting things. This is very concerning to me. And, I'll have a little fun with it right here. This isn't my own, it's kind of my own theory, but a lot of other people have this theory that Mark Zuckerberg will actually be running for president in 2020. Don't think it's so crazy. It's not so crazy. I mean, I could spend all day talking about that, but I won't. But I mean, imagine what's going to happen when you have a president in office that has direct access to, the most popular surveillance system in the world, that being Facebook. I mean, there's no more middleman. It still runs the company. You just ask for whatever. So anyway, so ever since the president got in office, Signal has gone up significantly in use. I'm very glad to see that. Most of you here are using it, which is fantastic. This is an app that a lot of features, like Ernie mentioned, that now suddenly has tons of permissions. It's true. Those features that have been added are like VoIP calling, or making phone calls, video calls. There's disappearing messages. All these different things. And one of the nicer things about Signal as well, so like those key parties I mentioned earlier, not the sexy ones, the ones about email. You can do that also. You can verify keys in person, which is a wonderful thing to do with Signal. So it's just pretty much now it's considered the gold standard. A lot of people hold it in higher regard than PGP, however, I do not. So if you're not already using Signal, get using it. If you're not using it all the time, get using it all the time. I will mention that, like Ernie mentioned, that there was WhatsApp uses the same technology, which is the Signal protocol, which is so widely regarded by people like a cryptography team out of Johns Hopkins University, like Nancy Green, whatever. They'll say, "Oh, this is the most amazing thing," whatever. That's fine. WhatsApp uses that technology. Facebook Messenger now, if you're using it on mobile, also has where you can encrypt using the Signal protocol. That will, it only exists on your phone, though. It's not something that's cross-platform. And honestly, I think Messenger becomes kind of meaningless when it's not something that you can access from every device. But anyway, but you could use it. But something I want to bring up is that, in fact, like I mentioned, the creator of Signal, Moxie Marlinspike, he uses very careful language. Nobody ever really calls him out on it. I like to. But he says it's a good implementation. He doesn't say it's great. He doesn't say it's perfect when these companies like Facebook, which is also WhatsApp, implement the Signal protocol into their messaging system. He says it's good. And there's there's some evidence to suggest that even though they're using the Signal protocol, Facebook is doing some monkey business in the code that is allowing for still allowing you to see what's happening, even though you're technically using the Signal protocol. So I'm very, very cautious about that. If you want to use Signal, just use Signal. Just because somebody asks us to use the Signal protocol, I do not recommend trusting that whatsoever. Just use the raw dog version of it. There you go. So now, another app to consider. So with messaging, it's pretty much Signal across the board. I don't really recommend any other. I mean, there's lots of great messaging apps, but I mean, a lot of their encryption, like there's what's a Line Messenger. Anybody here ever heard of Line Messenger? One person because I use it with her. Okay, there we go. That guy because he travels the world. But Line Messenger, very popular in Japan. Like great music. It's like 80s or something. It's huge in Japan. And it has its own little encryption, but it's not 100% open source. So because it's not 100% open source, do you know that it's actually doing what it's doing? No, you don't. And even if you can't read, how many people here are coders? How many people here are coders? Hell yeah. Okay. No, that's good. That's good. I mean, if you're not a coder, that's fine. We all, nobody's perfect. We all have to do our thing. So if you're a coder, I mean, or if you're not a coder, well, how do I know? Okay, it's open source. That's great. So that means that since it's open source, what open source means is you can see the code, you can verify it for yourself. How do I know? Well, you kind of trust the geeks. I mean, you feel a little more confident with people sitting in this room with you because, I mean, hey, we're all here for kind of shared reason of liberty, I assume, unless there's FBI agents here. If you're an FBI agent, raise your hand. Woo! All right. Anyway, my name's Brian Sovereign, if you didn't get it earlier. S-O-V-R-Y-N, spelled right, it's all that matters. So anyway, you do what's called trusted geeks, meaning that you're hopeful that there's people out there that are honest, and that when they say they checked it out, and they have, like, say, a couple decades on checking out code, that they're legit and that they need. So certainly there's trust to be had involved. Okay, so we're going to have to get into questions here pretty quick. But anyway, the last app that I want to mention to you, these are the two big things. Like I said, minimize the amount of data that you send out to people, particularly Google is an important one. Use Signal. The last one I want to mention is that Open Keychain app that I told you about. Okay, but you don't want to just use Open Keychain. You want to use Open Keychain and Canine Mail. This is if you have an Android device. And Open Keychain will help you create your PGP key, and then Canine Mail has a very nice setting within it that will allow you to like instantly set up where Open Keychain and Canine Mail are synergistic, and it will automatically send your emails as encrypted, and it will send your PGP key, your public key, along with them as well. So those are the two main apps. If you walk away with nothing else, I want you to do those. But let's get to the Q&A real quick. I just want to mention, and I'll mention it again at the end. If you want to know about other apps and other things you want to use and why you want to be concerned about all of this, a book literally yesterday. My first book came out. It's called Dark Android 2017 edition. This is a book that will get updated regularly because all of these changes they happen by minute. Or 5 seconds. So do pick up if you want to. Just go to darkandroid.info. You can get a copy of the book. And all the information in that is very helpful to iOS users as well as desktop users. But it talks about how it has screenshots in it. It has pictures, lots of pictures. If you love picture books, you're going to love this one. So it's only $2.99 if you want to pick that up. That's helpful as well. So let's get to the Q&A and start off with Daryl W. Perry, FPP.cc.
So I've got a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Okay.
You mentioned a couple of messaging apps. What are your thoughts very quickly on Wire and Riot?
Wire or Riot, yes. Okay. So Wire, just this past summer, if I'm right, finally became open source. I didn't recommend it for that because it wasn't. My other concern with Wire, I think Wire is largely fine. Just like there's another one called Telegram. Well, that's a whole other conversation. I'll say that for that. But Wire, so Wire is cross-platform, and the concern there is that, okay, you got this great encryption, but with great encryption, or with it being cross-platform, you have to, somewhere there has to be a handshake of the keys. Okay, public and private and whatever, and I'm not 100% confident in how I see them do the handshake. To guarantee that encryption is happening client-side, which is really important. You want client-side means it happens on your device. It's not happening on the server. As soon as it gets to somebody else's server, if it's not encrypted, screw it. It's pretty meaningless that you have any kind of encryption. So I'm a little sketchy on that, but largely I think it's fine. What was the Riot? Okay, so Riot is this IRC alternative. Effectively, it's kind of like an open source, more secure version of Slack. How many people here use Slack? I guess so. That's all right. Well, no, that's fine. No, Slack.
Use Riot.
What's that?
I also use Riot.
Use Riot. Oh, yeah, that's the thing. Some zero-sum game. Right? You use them all. So I don't mind Slack. That's okay. But Riot, it's still in beta, so don't trust them with your life. But I like what they're doing. Though I still regularly use IRC, Internet Relay Chat. It's still a thing, folks. I recommend it. So there you go. What else?
And the second part, I listen to basically everything that you come out with, even all of the Patreon content that you say. I haven't listened to all of it.
Look how good this guy looks now. I mean, really. If you've ever seen him in past years, it's all because he listens to my show and his stand-up. He did great work.
And Penn Sunday School.
Yeah, there you go.
I know you recommend, in addition to Bitcoin, people use Dash and Zcash.
I don't recommend, well, go ahead.
Okay, well, in addition to, as far as cryptos, the three that I heard you recommend are Bitcoin, Dash, and Zcash. I have yet to find a Zcash wallet for an Android device. Is there one? And do you recommend it?
So there might be people that work for Zcash in this audience, and I want to be very careful what I say around that. No, well, so first off, correct, the three cryptos I generally recommend are Litecoin, Bitcoin, and Zcash. Definitely Zcash. Zcash is one of them. I'm not paid by them. I wish I was, I'm not. But anyway, so there's no wallet for Zcash for Android. Zcash has some very high technical, well, not problems, technical requirements that a mobile device running it is. So Jax, though, the Jax wallet, which is available for Android, which right now there's some concerns around Jax, does accept Zcash. You know, we'd have to do a whole talk on Zcash. Maybe that's something we could get into if you wanted at the workshop. We could definitely get that kind of question more answered. But I just want to say quickly, I'm definitely a guy that's a big believer in not relying on mobile devices so much. I think laptops and concentrating on your laptop as your mode of communication and mode of interaction with the online world and not carrying your smartphone around with you all the time is one of the most basic and easiest ways to get serious privacy and security in your life because you have so much more control over the hardware and the software with that. And you can do more, and you can have Zcash on the laptop. Very easy. Anyway, Lynn, round of applause for Lynn, please. Amazing moment, amazing story. Lynn, question, go for it.
Hopefully it's not a stupid question in this group. But,
No, only stupid people. I'm kidding.
you mentioned that even if you're not holding your phone and somebody is 10 yards away, that what you're saying can be heard. How far away do they have to be that they won't be heard? Or if you're in a room in your house with the devices in it and the door's closed or something, I mean, at what point of isolation do you have to get to
Yeah, if it's even possible.
Really?
You know, and so one of the things, I talk about PGP. That's not a crazy question at all. It's great. This doesn't have I definitely don't have specific yardage, to answer that. But I can say the precision at which they can use microphones. PGP keys or PGP encryption. There was a flaw in Open PGP that allowed, if your smartphone was say sitting on your desk. And you were typing something, you could hear kind of the inner workings of your computer, not too technical, and it could tell what your private key was when you were typing on a PGP key. So I mean that's really high precision. That's genuine. So did you ever run that?
Yeah, I mean, you're walking through the woods 10 miles from civilization, or can you be in another room in your house with the door closed, with your computer?
Well,
you're getting any idea, maybe you don't know, but it's sort of alarming when you said that.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things that, when it's funny how, I get people that are what they call themselves anarcho-primitivists, okay, like they're really into getting rid of civilization and living a primitive lifestyle and everything. I think they're the only people that actually really listen to my show because you would throw away all technology and run into a cave, if that sort of thing went on. Actually, you know what I'm going to do, Lynn? I'll read this. I hope this isn't like Ghost. I'm going to actually read something that I put in my book. See, you can get it right on your Kindle. So I have a Kindle and Amazon. But anyway, this is from Steve Gibson, who is actually his podcast, Security Now, it's my personal favorite podcast. It's actually getting logged into the NSA archives now, just as of last week. That's how serious people take this podcast. But he talks about, this gets into anonymity, which I didn't get into in too much depth, and the importance of anonymity and how to do that. And I think this might answer what you have to do. This is going to sound crazy, but this is all very doable, and this is how you actually get real anonymity. Put it on top of the privacy and security that I was discussing during this talk. So I'll read here. This is from Steve Gibson, and this is just from 2 years ago. So the only way, if you absolutely need anonymity, is to roll together old school approaches and new school. Go somewhere to do this far away from your home convenience. So he's saying it's not just software. You have to actually get off your butt and go somewhere, right? So go somewhere to do this far away from your home convenience. Be anonymous there. Pay with cash. Don't go somewhere familiar. Don't know anyone. Don't make any friends. Don't talk to anyone. Don't stay long. Plan ahead. Rehearse your speed. Get it done and leave. Don't do anything there that involves your own real-world identity. And he says again, pay with cash. Change the MAC address of your machine. Maybe buy a cheap laptop just for the purpose so that it knows nothing. You have no history tied to it and so forth. And I would say since you have control over Tor, use more than 3 nodes. Don't use default settings. Use as many as you can so that you're, use widely geographically dispersed coordinates. It's all saying it's very stream of consciousness, and laying it out. And there's another paragraph there describing all that. But those are kind of the lengths that you need to go to and anything remotely looking like actual anonymity. And I think he's right. He's a person that doesn't mind. Like he likes government. Well, he doesn't like it, but he still believes in it to some degree, I guess. So that's something to consider. I think again, there's one of the things that we can do is, especially when we start using a lot of these technologies and everything, is that the alphabet soup organizations, FBI, CIA, whatever, they rely on you using Facebook Messenger as much as you rely on it, perhaps, to talk to other people. And when people start not using those services, I think you fall into two cracks. And I think you kind of do disappear, unless you're really targeted. That's kind of the best I've got. Thanks, Lynn. Go for it.
So I was going to ask you about Telegram, and you kind of already answered that question.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Maybe it's more for a workshop question. But the question I'll ask is, based on what I've heard on your show, I'm probably going to, my next phone will probably be a basic phone, so I may downgrade from a smartphone to a basic phone. But I was thinking, just to get some of that smartphone functionality, I may still need either a tablet or a laptop with me. If I use a tablet and it's connected to, say, a wireless carrier, does that just negate all the benefit, or should it be like a Wi-Fi only tablet, you think?
Okay, so I mentioned that book, Dark Android. I started a few years ago. It's called the Dark Android Project, which is what you can do to actually achieve this anonymity, privacy, and security. Okay, and the thing is that you can't use a SIM card. Right? Because SIM cards, we know that Malto, whatever, all their keys and handovers at the NSA and every point center. So hooking up SIM cards is a problem. So the combination of tablet and dumb phone, flip phone and all that, I think is a great idea. I would only have your tablet connect to Wi-Fi. But even that, there's a lot of challenges that go with all that. Definitely something we can talk about.
Public Wi-Fi is problematic, I think, is what you're getting at.
Well, it can be, but Wi-Fi. The problem is that Wi-Fi, 99% of Wi-Fi radios, antennas, the chips in your systems, are closed source. They're not open source, so we don't know what exactly is going on with those. That's the problem. So, all right, I got time for maybe one more real quick, and then we got
a guy at the other side.
What's that? Oh, please, go for it. All you. Please.
I don't know, I should probably defer because mine is more for laptops.
No, that's fine. Laptops is good. You can wait.
Okay, so short of doing an Edward Snowden where I have an air-gapped machine that isn't really useful to me in the networking environment anymore, how do you, I get the impression that the only way you can be sure at this point is if you buy a brand new machine and set it up from day one to be secure. But even then, it's I go to the Tor website, I download Tor. It seems to me if I was government, I would be making blogs of who logs in Tor and then putting them on my list of who to get into, right? So how do you go about from scratch building a secure machine?
Okay, so this is how we start. Keep listening. Bear with me here. You go in your backyard. You find that little pile of sand. You get a lighter and you start baking your own process. No, I'm totally kidding about that. No, that's a completely valid question. This is where that anonymity comes in. I was just reading about. We will get to the last question. This is that anonymity I was talking about with reading from Steve Gibson, where how you have to set that up, how you have to make it go. The first thing I'll recommend as far as laptops is you want to get what's called a Beaver boot. There's a few different companies out there that sell these. Minifree.org is one. They will sell different models. There's a T400, maybe the T500, the X200, X220. And these are we're talking about that open source. Most laptops today have, in fact, there have been, we've recently found out some of the concerns over modern processors, computer processors from Intel specifically, since about 2010, 2011. There's a lot of closed source kernel action like closed source stuff happening inside of your laptop that you have no control over. LibreBoots, however, are the one computer where everything has been open source, made backwards, that they did reverse engineering on it, so that it can still do everything a modern computer can do. But there's whole blobs in your processors that you just don't know, you have no control over, and can be used against you. In fact, just in the past couple of months, we found out it was verified that Intel was able to do that through thanks to their management engine, that they could just take completely over your computer. So if you want to consider LibreBoot, that's the way to start that process. And then look into physical actions of connecting and anonymously. Let's go with this guy right here, then we'll wrap it up.
Thanks. Not too long ago, we introduced an article about Signal being detectable by the NSA. Have you heard of that?
That Signal's detectable by not the Vault 7 stuff? Because WikiLeaks went. Go ahead.
It wasn't too long ago.
Like maybe April?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, so this was a huge snafu on the part of tech journalism, major snafu. And this has to do with the Vault 7 leaks from WikiLeaks. And their claim was that Signal's broken, WhatsApp's broken, Telegram's broken, they're all broken. Now, what was broken was older versions, and significantly, in tech terms, 2 years, significantly older versions of Android were crackable to where you could see what was happening, what you're typing, say, on Signal or Telegram or any of these messaging apps. However, Signal itself has not been cracked by the NSA. At least, unless they haven't in the past couple of days, I wouldn't know. But I think I know what you're talking about. I think it's a Vault 7 thing. And Open Whisper Systems went right at them and said, wait, what are you talking about? Show us the evidence. And finally they had to fess up and say, oh, yeah, we meant Android. Wicker, closed source, but not a bad idea. Good people behind it. Cory Doctorow, who I recommend, if you want to start reading about people that have this privacy mindset and all that, Cory Doctorow's books are top-notch. Just some of the best. I don't care for some of his endgame solutions because they get political, but that's just my opinion on that. So anyway, that's it. Thank you so much. Just in that double-breasted tent over there, there will be a workshop. I'll be there for an hour along with some other amazing people that can help you out with it. We'll be talking about this stuff if you want and other things. Please check out SolidTech, SOBRYTech.com, and if you want to grab my book, darkandbright.info. Great way to get started on all this. For anybody at any technical level, thank you again so much.